Hey everyone, we're Group Llama. My name is Ankit, and today we're just going to be walking through our Cold Call web app that we built. It's basically an app that we built to make a classroom run more smoothly and take out, like, I guess, objectivity out of the classroom to make it more machine operated. With our app, you can create profiles, create accounts, you can load classes, upload student like files with their like names and everything like that, as well as their rating files if you have one saved, and you can even call in students randomly based off of some predetermined criteria that we'll get into later.
Hey everyone, I'm Cade. So basically, this app is just a convenient way for the professor we're going to show you to operate his classroom. In this case, we'll be showing you a professor who teaches a law class. And the kind of basic idea behind this project was to improve the way that he can call on students during discussions. Basically, the purpose of the app and the problem we were trying to address is it's just kind of difficult to keep track of your students' progress based purely upon their answers in class. So this provides an easy way to solve that and to operate your classroom a lot more smoothly. Some of the use cases we'll show you are based around this professor I mentioned earlier. Um, this professor used the app during their entire semester, and they built up a lot of data based on calling on students. So they'll be able to go into their student analytics page, uh, track and view data for individual students, uh, basically allowing them to address any issues that students having in terms of, oh, they didn't understand this content on this day very well, kind of similar things to that. So another use case, they want to randomly select a student. So say this professor is talking about a specific topic and they have a question, they'll click on the student randomizer, and this will allow them to fairly call on a student who hasn't been picked um, more than other students in terms of number of calls. So it's a pretty fair way to assess everyone's understanding of the content. And another use case, they want to export their data onto a spreadsheet. So this allows them to easily import data and also export data from the app. And they can specify the type of format they'd like, making it just very easy and smooth to use.
So before we get into the details of our application, first I'm going to talk about the technologies that went into it. I'm Thomas Karika, and before we get into the functionality of our application, I'm going to talk about the technologies we used to get our app up and running. So, first of all, our server is running on an Ubuntu server using Oracle Cloud, using the Django. So the Django uses the model view templates architecture. So we have our database models, which use SQLite. So we have a bunch of different constraints. We have foreign keys. So those store all of the data that we need to hold. And then we have a set of HTML templates. So these are statically created by the Django backend whenever a user opens the application. So using some custom middleware we wrote, we could use the user's user agent to see if they're using a phone or if they're using a desktop app. And we could then change what the app looks like there to use a better layout for their device. So alongside that, we're also using gUnicorn and Nginx. So gUnicorn acts as a HTTP gateway between the server and the HTTP server. So Nginx is what allows people to actually connect to the server, and gUnicorn bridges that with the code that we wrote in order to actually work. Alongside that, for security, we have a TLS certificate, which is obtained through Let's Encrypt and Certbot. And we also have the server configured with DNS through Cloudflare. Alongside this, in order to test, we use two different protocols. So first, we use the Django built-in test suite, which is based off of the standard Python unit testing. And we also have Selenium, which pretty much just acts as a browser, and you could automate different scripts, which will run through and act as a person actually using the app to make sure everything's correct. And alongside this, we also have an STMP server running, which allows for password resets.
I'm Colin Richard, and I'm going to be going over the sign up page. So this is a professor new to the app, and he is going to be creating his account for the first time. So this is the page you land on, and you click sign up, and you are brought to the sign up page where you can enter your credentials here to create your account. And this sign up page is also secured with reCAPTCHA. Now, once a user is signed up, they are able to log in by entering their username and password. And then they are prompted that saying they do not have any classes, and they are asked if they would like to import or create a new one. So we're going to go ahead and add a class here, and which the class add page, you enter the class name, which we're going to use CSCE 492. You enter the start date as well as the end date, and then you submit, and then it successfully adds the class. And you can see it on the manage classes page, where there's a bunch of functionality here. You can add classes, filter through your classes, search up your classes, and for each class as well, you can edit that class, you can export that class into a CSV file, and you can also import a CSV of students. So now we're going to be showing off the ability to manually add students, where here's the add new student page, where it prompts you to enter in the first name, the last name, the USC ID, the email, the class, and the seating of that student. And you can also add multiple students, which I believe we're going to be showing later by entering in all the information in a comma separated list. But we're going to go ahead and add that student, and it tells the user that student Bob Jones was added successfully. And here we're showing off the ability to add multiple students using that comma separated list. Now we add students, and it tells us that 2 students were added successfully. So now we should be able to go home to view those students. And yes, there they are. For all those students, you can view their metrics, edit them as well, and sort through them, search students by first name, last name, or USC ID. Here you can see we're sorting by last name, first name as well. So now that the professor has their classes and students configured, they are now able to start cold calling on students. So now the professor is going to want to add more students via a CSV file. So he's going to go to manage classes, and for that class, he's going to click on import CSV, and he's able to download sample files to show how the data needs to be formatted. And once he gets his files all configured, as you can see here is the data formatting. Yeah, he's going to choose a student file using the data that he saw from the sample file, drag that in, and then a rating file as well, which contains the data for rating those students, and he's going to click on import. And now we can see all of that data, including the students and the ratings, have all been successfully imported, and you can see it here in the student list. So now that the professor, and you can sort by average score as well, as you can see here. And now that the professor has successfully configured all of his students and classes, he can now begin cold calling on students.
This is our randomizer feature. So the way it works is up top, you select which class you're choosing from. So the professor would choose from or whatever class is currently happening right now, and it would load up a student that's shown on screen, which it shows their prior calls and their average rating, which is after every call based off how they do. The professor gives them a rating out of 5 stars, which is shown at the bottom. Their current status, which is if they're like unprepared, absent, or however good they do, and then their as well as their seating, like where they're positioned in the classroom. So the way it works is it randomly selects a student, and the professor would ask them a question. Based off their answer, they would give them something out of 5 stars, or if they're completely unprepared, there's an unprepared button. As well as if the student is absent, because this is automated or automated feature, it doesn't know exactly which is absent or not. So the professor would click absent, and if that student is marked as absent for that time, the system would not call it again when it's randomly selected. But after giving the student a rating, a button appears at the bottom where you could choose a new student for the next question or next time you want to call on someone. And then a new student's called as well, and you can just keep doing that as many times as you want. And once that class is over, you can either go back to your home page or you can select the next class from the top.
So after you've done all of this calling on students, what are you going to do with the data? So for each student, you could choose to view their metrics. So if you go back to the Bob Jones, which we saw with the randomizer, it'll store all of their data. So we could see all the times they got called, we could see that he was absent this one time, and it shows a graph with all of their calls. Now, this graph isn't quite useful when there's just one call, but if a student has a lot of data, say Jane Doe, you could then get a running average and a line of best fit, which uses a linear regression. So you have a sequential order of all of their prior calls, and when you click on something in the graph, you can see when it was done. And unprepared and absent calls are mutually exclusive, so it will always show as a 0, but it does not influence their total score. You could also add a note to a student, like for example, if they missed a midterm, which saves specifically for that student, and you can also choose to delete it if you're done with that note.
Hi, my name is Trevor, and we will be going through the student and class management. So first, to drop a student, the user or the professor will want to click the edit, and then from here, the professor then can either choose to update the student if they want to change the first, last name to the student, or the USCID, email, class, etc. So let's say the user wanted to make, or the professor wanted to make the seating different. They can then update the student, and then you can see it becomes the back middle. And so now, if we press the edit button again, we then have the option to delete a student, which will then just remove the student from the class, or to drop a student, just to make sure that we are preserving the data, in case the student is having like issues or something. So now that the professor dropped the student, you can see that they're no longer a part of the class, but the data is still preserved, and they're then listed at the very bottom. So now we can go to the manage class. So let's say the professor has just finished their semester and they would like to archive it. They have the ability to do so. So again, we're preserving the data and we're not deleting the class. The professor then can go into the archived classes and edit it again, and then unarchive it, just to make sure that, again, we're keeping the data.
If you have all of the data for a class, and you want to use it for something, how do you get it out of the app? Well, our website allows you to export to 3 different file formats, and you could either export a file, which will then showcase all of the ratings. You can also export a file that just shows like your student information, which is good for making sure like everything's correct. Now, if you have multiple classes, then choose to export multiple classes at once. So if you choose to do this, it'll then provide you with a zip folder. And this zip folder will have every class that you need.
So here's the profile section of the professor. Here, the professor can see their settings, like email, first name, last name, and they can also update this. So if they wanted to change their first name or last name for whatever reason, they can then do so and save the changes. Here, you can also change the photo of the image just to personalize it a bit more. As you can see, the profile picture was then changed to a nice picture of a cat.
Let's say you log out and you forgot your password. Then what can you do? Well, we have an STMP server set up so you could reset your password. So, once you send in a password reset request, it will appear in your email. Here we can see the password reset email, and clicking on the link takes you to the password reset. So assuming your password meets the criteria, it will save it and it'll allow you to log in again. So, our website also includes mobile support. So based off the user agent, it will change the layout and CSS that's provided to use a more mobile-friendly view. Thank you for your time, and we hope that you integrate ColdCall into your lecture experience.